I am designing a workbench that is made out of pallet planks. The workbench is fully knocked down. It can be put apart down to single pieces, which is very convenient for me because it is easy to transport and we move a lot, and it is easy to store when not in use. Just under the bed, as I don't have a proper workspace and my wife doesn't like me having it permanently in the living room. This is an example of how I would fasten things to the workbench using wedges and bench dogs. This in the front would represent a bowl that is being carved. If we hide some planks away, we see there is a dog on each side, and then there is just these small planks there resting on top of this thin strip. The lower crosspiece is holding the 5 legs planks together and holding the 2 legs in place. We may say it is pulling them together in their lower part. The upper crosspiece is keeping the distance between the 2 legs. It is mounted in a vertical way to allow the recovery of the wedge in the lower crosspiece joint. These 2 opposed thin planks with wedges in the end, which I call needles, go through the top part of the legs and all the long planks forming the working surface. They hold the top part of the workbench together, and we may say they are pulling the legs together in their top. I guess the combination of the 3 of them will make this part of the workbench stable enough. On each of the long sides of the workbench there is a set of diagonals which transmit the forces from the working surface to the legs and prevent the legs from rotating on this plane. This kind of diagonal plank has a joint with the leg combining an old roof truss joint for compression and a dovetail for traction. This diagonal plank is mounted in the leg between the leg planks. Then another piece of plank is added under it to hold it in place. Between these 2 diagonal pieces there is a piece that transfers compressions between the working surface and the diagonals. This other kind of diagonal planks work on compression and have a long plank resting on top of them. They rest on the legs. This piece shaped like a double wedge goes inside of the leg and is held in place by 2 wedges under it. I call it saddle, and it is intended to hold together the 5 layers of planks that form the leg in the bottom of the leg. To make the diagonals work in traction in this joint and prevent them from rotating, a plank with a rectangular hole is pressed down on the top of the diagonals. I call this piece window. When I put bench dogs in the working surface of the bench, I fill up the gaps between them and the needles with short planks. When one dog, short plank or wedge is not resting on the needles or the upper crosspiece, they rest on planks that go across the workbench and rest on top of the windows. The needles are thin planks that end on dovetails. They go through the mortises in the long planks and the top of the legs. They can be removed in order to change the setup of the working surface, combining long planks, shorter planks and bench dogs. Once the working surface is set, the needles are driven back inside and are locked between them with a small piece or key placed inside these bevel grooves on the inside faces of each of the needles. I learned about this joint in an entry in the blog The Carpentry Way by Chris Hall. The working surface is never fully completed with long planks and such before inserting the needles. A gap needs to be left for inserting the key, and after, the long planks are slided over the key as it needs to be enclosed by the mortises to work. The workbench is intended to be used with hand tools, which often means hammering. The way the bench works and the way I will be holding pieces being worked in place with bench dogs and wedges creates important compression forces inside the working surface, which compress against the needles in the direction of the length of the workbench and against the sides of the long planks across the workbench. This means shear stress in the end section of the long planks and in the dovetail area of the needles. The long planks that are forming the working surface have the same length as they would have in the pallet. I don't reduce the length. That means that in the ends and middle of the plank there is a small square area where the nails were that has been weakened first by the nail pistols and then by the dismantling process. As I cannot trust the resistance to shear stress of these areas, I have oversized the distance between the needles and the edge of these planks a bit, hoping that it will be enough. I am also not sure if the needle dovetail areas will hold. A shaving horse can be mounted inside the working surface of the bench. I thought of putting some small planks across the upper bar of the horse to try to make the friction with the piece being worked better, and for sewing wedges the way I used to do.